bit older, a little bit smarter, but it's not about me, it's about Glenn. I've been asked to say a few words by his lovely wife, Holly. So apparently we're here to celebrate the fact that about 40 years ago, in fact exactly 40 years ago on Monday the 4th of Feb, Glenn Walter Simpson entered the world at Sutherland Hospital down in the mighty Sutherland Shire. So I looked up a few random facts about 1973, February in fact, and the hit song, the #1 single in Australia at the time was Carly Simon's You're So Vain. There's a theme here with Simmo being born. The Prime Minister was Gough Whitlam and the Premier of Queensland was Joe Bjelke-Petersen. But most importantly, you'll probably know that Glenn and I do follow the Sharks. It's a bit of a curse. In 1973, we played Manly in the grand final and were robbed 10-7. But yeah, we grew up with Sylvania Waters. You might remember that name from another place I'll talk about later on. But we both went to a pretty nice school, apparently called Sylvania High School, which has some famous things like the girls from Pubic Blues went there, and Glenn and I went there. Good school. So as I went through first, I was a bit of a nerd, I suppose. I was doing okay at school, so Glenn had to follow that. And he used to get a hard time about, why aren't you, doing like your brother and all that sort of crap. And that hasn't hurt him at all through his life. He hasn't got a chip on his shoulder at all about that. But it actually did give me, I thought that was a bit uncool. I've got kids here, it's PG, alright? And I know it gave Glenn a little bit of anger as well. Okay, so he wasn't real happy about that. So the school wasn't such a fan of Glenn, and Glenn wasn't such a fan of the school.
Whoa, that's my boy!
So much, give this guy another glass of champagne. So much so that Glenn decided to nickname a few of the teachers there. Right, there was one shorter young man who wasn't so good looking, and he got called Yoda. And that kind of stuck, and I think he's probably still there if he's still teaching the poor little bugger. The other bloke had a bit of a speech thing, and Glenn apparently made him more nervous, so he became known as Mr. Samuels. If you know Glenn, this is when he's about 13, 14, he's having a bit of a crack. And the last bloke had a nice beard and a very long neck, and Glenn used to call him Pop Net, as you can probably imagine. Yeah, and there's a simulation like that. So funnily enough, Glenn decided that him and Sylvania High School weren't for each other, and they parted ways in about year 10. So Mum and Dad thought, that's okay, we'll send him to the brothers. They'll sort him out at De La Salle down in Cronulla. That didn't quite work. Glenn decided to flip off the school, and he left at year 11 and decided to go and do a trade. You probably didn't know that, right? But more on that later. At the same time, around 1992, I was doing my pilot's licence. Mum and Dad were good enough to pony up some cash, and I finished off getting my commercial. Glenn, being the entrepreneur he is, said, that's not fair. You get money, I want money. He got money, I spent mine on flying lessons, actually kind of got me a job. Glenn spent his on bullets, and pretty much a ute that used to be a speaker with some wheels on it, as he went around terrorising the neighbourhood. As I said, 1992, that reality TV show was called Sylvania Waters, you might see it. That was actually our street, no kidding, McIntyre Crescent. They're in 48, we're down in 20. Glenn was a little bit offended that some blowins could have all this attention. So when the ABC crew were taking a pan shot of the whole street, he thought he'd show them the best thing that he could about Sylvania. Funnily enough, that ended up on the cutting room floor and not on the show. But Nolan and Laurie were quite happy that Glenn didn't end up in their cut. But he ended up being a tradie, and to his credit, he stuck with it. He got his trade, so you are talking to a qualified electrician over here. Where's Steve? He's no good, but it is on his certificate here somewhere.
I got no idea. I cheated my whole way.
But the funny thing is, how that happened is, I reckon Glenn should have been called Ray, because he's a chip off the old block. His dad owned a car yard, he could sell ice to Eskimos, same. Not me. Anyway, that's the way it kind of worked out. Glenn was the electrician who was the technical expert at a sales expo in Darling Harbour. He went there to sell fine German power tools, and somehow he outsold the salesman of the day, who suddenly got the flick, and Glenn got promoted to the sales guy at that company.
Second-year apprentice.
There you go. So since then, he's kind of been selling anything. Who's bought a car off Glenn? Hands up.
Oh, not yet. Not yet.
I got two.
There's not enough.
How many have you had warranty claims?
Mine's in a warranty claim right now.
No warranty.
I was great, mate. You know, he's done really well, and for some reason he decided to leave the big city behind. He didn't like Sydney. He wanted to trade all that in for some white shoes, white shorts, white shirt, gold watch, gold sunnies. Move up to the Gold Coast, white shoes. But it was probably the best thing he could have done, and there was some stuff going on in the family. It was a good move. But anyway, Glenn managed to wangle his way into the car game up here, and now he's a businessman. He owns his own business. He swings a hammer and talks underwater, as you probably know. We'll give him that chance later on. And he's been keeping the Gold Coast real estate business going with the construction companies. How many houses have you built up here now, mate? Yeah, a few. So he's doing all right. But I think the biggest thing that happened was I reckon my brother became a man up here, funny enough. You might argue this point, but he's married. He's got Who would have thought, hey? Honestly, I didn't. I saw some epic fails up here.
Can I get a beer? Can I get a
If
beer?
anyone has heard the name Banana before, you probably know who I'm talking about. Ducks on the pond, but be careful what I'm saying. But stuff didn't work. But funnily enough, he needed a bit of a push to go in the right direction. Where's Eric and Robin? These two people have a lot to answer for. Lenny Boy decided he didn't really want to get married. He didn't really want to settle down. Eric knows Glenn from the car game, and for some reason, unbeknownst to me, thinks he'd be a fine husband. I'm like, all right, man. That's cool. So Glenn wouldn't go for this blind date, so he said, it's all right, Simmo, let's come down the boardwalk here and have a couple of beers. No worries. He pre-positioned his stepdaughter, and looking something like this. The rest is history. So the father of two young kids. If you've seen Aiden, he's a doppelganger for Simmo. And please, God, hear me. I don't say much to you very often, but just make him exactly like Glenn was for my mum for the next 20 years. Sorry, Ollie. I said to him, not you. But mate, it's been a hell of a 40 years. I'm proud of you. I love you, my brother. And I'd just like to say cheers and happy birthday to Glenn. It's a bit of a free-for-all. Gaz wants to say a few words and then we'll hand the mic over to Glenn. Funnily enough, we'll see how he goes. Right, where's Gaz?